Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are so excited to be reviewing the film The Seventh Seal. We're going to share some context and story around how we got to experience this film recently. That was just an incredibly thrilling experience. But first, let's start off with an IMDb summary for The Seventh Seal.
A knight returning to Sweden after the Crusades seeks answers about life, death, and the existence of God as he plays chess against the Grim Reaper during the Black Plague.
All right. Now, ain't that a premise? Okay, let's start with our one-sentence summaries and Movies and Us tradition for The Seventh Seal. Sarah, what is yours?
All right, mine is the most stressful chess game in the history of humanity.
Yeah, the stakes could not be higher.
Right, literally could not be higher.
Also, remember to check who your confessionals are too, perhaps.
Right, just small details. It's fine.
My one-sentence summary is Swedish visual poetry on the philosophical questions of life.
That's exactly what it is. Nailed it.
So good. Okay. Well, let's start off before we dive into our thoughts about the film, and we will kind of dive into unpacking so much of the richness in The Seventh Seal. But let's share a little bit about how we got to experience this film recently and in a very special way. So, Sarah, do you want to share a little bit of that context?
Yes. If you are watching this on YouTube, you see that I am at a different location than I normally am in. And that is because I am currently in Jen's apartment right now. Wow. She's in that room right there. And so we got to go see The Seventh Seal together at the historic Egyptian theater. We got to see it in 35 millimeter, and it was so much fun. It was a pretty full theater too, which was just so cool to experience this with other people on the big screen.
Yeah. Anyone who's going to see The Seventh Seal at like 7 p.m. on a Sunday night is a real one. And it was so fun to be in a room full, nearly full in the center section of people that were excited to show up, find parking, brave LA traffic to go see this on a Sunday night. Like, talk about combating the Sunday scaries with, just some meditations on death and historic, iconic film from one of the greats of our time. So that was very exciting to experience this together. And getting to see this on the big screen, I think, was really special too. This is a 1957 film that typically we'd have to watch at home or on our very much smaller screens. So to experience this film with the sound design of the Egyptian theater and that huge screen was, with all of that technical, elements together, was pretty special too. So just a rare experience.
Yeah, and to see this with people too, I think is so great. Because again, if you're watching it at home, you're probably going to be watching it by yourself on the couch. And I still think that would be a good time. But man, it was so cool to hear other people laughing and reacting to what we were seeing on screen. So that was that. It's that scene in Cinema Paradiso where everybody is like glued to the screen and just like the magic of cinema, and to be able to experience that with such an iconic film in a historic theater was just really, really special.
And the humor, which we definitely have to talk about with The Seventh Seal, which was so special to experience the laughs together, like you mentioned, Cinema Paradiso style, to hear the chucklings and the hee-hee-hees under people's breath. The dude next to me was having a grand time and was laughing at all the jokes too, which was really fun and endearing to see. So that was really special. Yeah, what a way to experience an iconic film, and to get to do it together too. That was really neat. We got to like turn to each other afterwards and be like, oh, wow, there is so much for us to think about and talk about. But we got to do that together. It's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we are here about to talk about it. We have not talked about this film either.
You
So
know, I'm very
we've
proud of
had to
us.
hold all of our thoughts about it until right now. So this is going to
Mm-hmm.
be fun because I'm assuming that you had a good time with this, but we haven't actually talked about it. So we're going to find out
Yeah.
right now.
And what better way to talk about the seventh seal than to rock some black cloth and garb with some hoods to honor and personify death itself,
Absolutely.
the
So
Grim Reaper
if
himself.
if you are not already subscribed to our Movies and Us YouTube channel, you are missing out on this ridiculousness of us trying to imitate death as best we can.
Yeah, it seems that Death did not have long hair,
No,
and this is looking a little less menacing when we've got like
absolutely. Yeah.
it's just kind of in the way. It's flowing everywhere. It's stuck in our
Hmm.
necks. So
Yep.
yeah,
Death also didn't have glasses, so
we came prepared. Yeah, they didn't have glasses.
you
Yep,
know,
Death is not looking at a screen for like 10 hours of the day,
it's
trying to
true.
protect his dear, dear corneas because he can see all, apparently, in the physical realm and the spiritual realm.
It's probably one of the benefits. There can't be many benefits to being death, but 20/20 vision is probably one of them.
Probably a pretty good one. Probably a pretty good one. Well, to save just our pits from absolutely sweating, we are going to deny ourselves of the joy of getting to do this entire episode looking like this. So restore back the wind to the tops of your head as we can dive into the seventh
Oh,
seal now. uh we our test clip for this episode, we had a grand
unhinged.
old time. Go to socials at Movies Nest Pod to watch that foolishness. uh yeah,
Yeah,
we got a little carried away. It was very fun.
just a little bit. We had a great time. Nothing
Listen,
like being able to joke before talking about this really philosophical, meaty film, which is actually something that The Seventh Seal does quite well, balancing humor and then these deep philosophical, meditative concepts. So,
mhm,
we're just trying to be in the spirit of the film.
exactly. Honor it well.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's dive in. We're not going to spoil this movie yet. It did come out like 70 years ago. So we're going to keep this beginning section short. But overall, high level thoughts about the Seventh Seal. Sarah, curious to hear how this landed for you.
Yeah, this is one of those films that immediately as soon as it was over, I was like, I have to watch this again. Like
Mm,
it's so densely packed. There's so much going on. There's so many things to like think about and consider that I couldn't take it all in this go around. And this is my first time watching this film. So I couldn't catch everything the first time. And I love it when I feel that way about a film when it's over.
mm,
There's a lot of movies that I watch and I'm like, I got it. I'm good. I don't have like a need to see it again. But The Seventh Seal, I need to rewatch this film. And I'm very excited about that. But I think one of the things that impressed me the most is what we were just talking about and the balancing of those two different tones. And it's very, very funny. And there are these very serious, very dark, very somber things that the film is also exploring. And these two things are held in tension with each other. And the way that the
mm,
film is paced to go back and forth between these different tones, it doesn't feel like overwhelming or out of place, but I feel like they complement each other really well, which is something that's very hard to do. So, yeah, really impressed with this film and having a really good time just kind of thinking about it since we saw it yesterday.
yeah. This film is so rich. I understand. I hadn't seen this film before, and I understand why it is so iconic, and it has the legacy that it does. Um, there's a wisdom in this film that I think is incredibly deep, and it's expressed both through the humor, the story arc, but also through the visuals. I mentioned this in my one sentence summary, but as an incredibly visual movie watcher, it was so satisfying to see some of the themes and ideas expressed by the characters in the story shown visually through the framing and the cinematography or the items and the props used in frame. There's just so much meaning that was baked into those, and that was thrilling to see. It was incredibly poetic. I was also shocked to see how well the humor has aged over time. I think sometimes in older films, sometimes the humor is made for the specific time period that it exists in and the specific culture that it exists in as well. And to feel how universal the concepts and ideas that this film is playing with in a humorous way still ring so true right now, in our day and age here in 2026, was oddly comforting to feel connected to people in 1950s in a foreign country and feel like we are all part of the same human experience, that those fundamental truths and relational dynamics between families and roles and archetypes in society and places that people fill, the fundamental questions that we're all wrestling with are still the same. I left this theater feeling oddly comforted by that, and I didn't expect to feel that watching The Seventh Seal on a Sunday evening, but it was an experience I didn't expect to have at all and was quite satisfying. So that was really special too.
Yeah, yeah, it's so human. And even though I didn't like emotionally connect with the characters, what they are wrestling with and what each of them represents, I think is really interesting to think about. And so it's easy to like see yourself in certain characters, or
Mm.
just their questioning about life and death and these like really really big topics that we as humans are always wrestling with. So it's
Mhm.
it's interesting watching this movie that's so many decades old, that is set, post crusades, and to still feel seen and feel like you're connecting to these characters and the questions that they're asking. So it's cool to see a film like this that connects to those universal truths that we're all grappling with and wrestling with, no matter what country we're in, no matter what decade we're in. It's all still something that we have to grapple with as people.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I was surprised by how oddly uh trusting in the goodness of humanity this film was. At least that's my interpretation and read on it, which we can dive into some of the details of that a little bit later. But on the whole, I think that this film is honoring the triumph of those that are trying to do good or are well meaning, even if they are unsuccessful. And even some of the deeply flawed characters and problematic characters in the film are almost stumbling into those and those desires or those tendencies, but their overarching intention is to try to protect, try and do good, even when they fail and they miss the mark. And even though the way that the seventh seal ends is honoring a triumph of faith in a way, in a faith that maybe is mocked and deemed to be silly and ridiculous, like that is who gets to continue on. And I just didn't expect that from this film either. A film that is about death, and specifically about death during an incredibly bleak period in human history, and yet there's a levity, there is a an earnestness about what the seventh seal seems to believe in the fundamental core of human beings, and during a time here in 2026 that is very dark and there's a lot of cynicism around. The seventh seal was almost this weird breath of fresh air, and once again I did not expect that going into this film, to have this film restore a little bit of that in me in a way that I didn't expect. It's fascinating because we've got to see the seventh seal very close in succession with seeing Project Hail Mary, which is a film that is doing a lot of that restoration of belief in goodness and optimism that is so needed right now. And I'm like, well, the seventh seal did a much better job of that for me than this other film, and that's a little strange. But the seventh seal really earnestly kind of does in a way that is shocking to me.
I appreciate how different we are as human beings, that you walked away from this movie optimistic. I didn't walk away pessimistic, but it was this it was interesting to watch these characters uh respond to the reality of death. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Death is something that we all will experience at some point in time. We will also experience the death of loved ones throughout our
Yeah.
lives, and that's a really hard thing to grapple with. And so I was just really impressed how this film was able to take that concept, and to your point in your one sentence summary, like take that concept and turn it into visual poetry. And that's exactly what this film did. And so
Hmm.
I do feel as though there's something comforting about this film, and the way that it talks about death, it personifies death, because it is a reality that we will all face, whether we're
Hmm.
running from it or not. Like, it is just a reality of life. And so the fact that this film chooses to tackle this really difficult and complex subject matter, I think is comforting. And like we've talked about, there's so much to think about, so much to chew on in this film.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's give a spoiler alert for the Seventh Seal. It's been many, many years, decades and decades. This is a film that I'm so glad I finally got to watch, and I wish I had seen it sooner. So this is your PSA to go watch Seventh Seal if you haven't seen it yet, and if you have, gosh, go re-experience it again. The text is so rich. So we're gonna dive into spoiler territory. Um, while we're talking about this idea of the way that the Seventh Seal seems to tackle the topic of death, which is incredibly difficult for many to grapple with and wrestle with for all of us. One of the things I found really notable about the personification of death is that the primary trait that is expressed about him and that character is this almost sterile matter of factness, but it is very decidedly different from another interpretation they could have gone with in this direction that is much more of a menacing, ominous evil. And he shows up with the hood on and everything, and he's scary. And but in the conversation there's almost this professionalism perhaps in the way that he's communicating. This is inevitability, and it's got to happen, and your time will come. It could be now, it could be later. But there's I was shocked to see that death in the Grim Reaper character didn't lean even more into that terror and that horror. I was thinking a lot about Nosferatu, the 1922, I believe. That might be the wrong year. The 1920s Nosferatu, where there is this presence and foreboding sense of evil baked into that character. And that's not in this personification of death. And I think that was really notable, that his primary defining trait to me in my interpretation was a matter of fact inevitability more than it was a true intention of evil that is being exacted amongst the population at scale. You see the effects of death obviously in the lamenting of the people, but the actual character of death itself is not shown to be that way. And I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I love that too. I expected, the Grim Reaper to be big and scary, and because that's just kind of how the Grim Reaper is
Yeah.
portrayed in media. So I was surprised by the restraint. The other thing that I loved about how we saw death personified is the how shocking it was every time he showed up. And again, it wasn't what death itself was doing. It was how the shot was framed, and then you finally realize that, oh, he's right there and I didn't spot him earlier. So I love
Mhm.
those little moments where he shows up kind of unexpectedly, and again, that is very fitting in how death
Yeah.
shows up sometimes. Sometimes it's a long process before somebody dies, and sometimes it's quick and you didn't expect it. And so I appreciate that we see those nods to life in how the Grim Reaper shows up in this film.
Mm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the dynamics of the unpredictability of it all, and, they're in the middle of merrymaking, and that looming inevitability is always there. One of the shots that I adored, that I think is a great example of the expression of the ideas visually, is when they're, having their picnic on the hill, and the skull, which they use in the play, the couple uses in the play for the 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 character of death in the play, is constantly looming over Joff's shoulder. And it's this foreboding presence. And while there's so much merrymaking and lighthearted levity in that scene, the presence of that skull just sucks your eye's attention to it. And it's almost distracting. Like, I can't focus on what he's saying and all of the fun that they're having, because that looming presence of death always behind your shoulder, looking over your shoulder, being shown in that way was so interesting. And there's so many long shots of Joff speaking and being silly, and that skull never leaves the frame, always in view. And so I think that's one of the moments that, I was like, gosh, this is genius. This is poetic in the way that the visuals are supporting the ideas without having to spoon feed and have the characters discuss it so explicitly. You feel the presence, you can see the presence of death coming for this crew.
Well, and also what an insight into the knight, Antonius Block, who is the one who is playing chess with the Grim Reaper. And you know he starts the game, and it takes the entire movie for him to finish the game. And so if you were in that place, and they even have the dialogue of like, death has been hunting him and now it's finally his time. And so I feel like that is such a brilliant way to visually get us into his mind of,
Mhm.
he's it I mean, how could that not be at the forefront of your mind even when you're having this great time sharing a meal, joking, laughing? Like, that's still in the back of your head of like, man, it's my time. I'm trying to cheat death, but it's my time. And so I loved how that was framed.
Mhm. And him constantly having to be pulled away from moments of togetherness. It's almost like it just creeps in, sometimes especially in the moments of joy and of merrymaking and of togetherness and community. You're just there's this feeling that, gosh, it's so good right now and I don't want to lose it. And so that idea and that thought of the potential loss, the threat of the potential loss of that, almost creeps in most when things are good. Yeah, and you see him having to go away from the group and go play his next move on the chessboard.
Which I loved that the game, spans the entire movie. I don't know what I expected this film to be like, but I don't think I expected, these little like pit stops to play chess. But I think that that's really brilliant because, again, it creates that sense of foreboding, and without having to make the Grim Reaper larger than life. We just know that when he gets to X place, he's going to have to play again. And he's trying to cheat death, but his time is limited in his ability to cheat death. And so that's always in the back of your mind as you're watching the film. And I love how that was paced.
Even the concept of getting to play the game with the chance of beating death is a failed attempt to begin with anyway. Um, Grim Reaper just show up and take you out
Right?
anytime he wants to. But the the human hubris to believe that you can outsmart death is also so fundamentally human. You know, we live in a time right now where those in power and that have money and resources are truly trying to live immortally and extend their life as long as they can. That's been written into like mythology from like generations and centuries, is how can we cheat death? And so this idea that Block believes that he could have a chance and buy himself more time is in itself a fundamental human truth of how we are wired, and the silly frivolousness of that idea to begin with. And while he is playing the game and knowing he's about to lose, he yet again chooses to believe that he can cheat death by knocking over the pieces. And I just love that Death's like, nice try. That was pretty cute. But I remember exactly where all of them were. So let me put the pieces back together now. Um and so there's this idea that that was his like final act of his one meaningful deed, which allowed the couple that were the performers to get away. And yeah, and we got to talk about that plot point at some point. But yeah, just this like fundamental like human fallacy of, yeah, surely we can conquer this thing that has never been conquered before, and outsmart it is silly and ridiculous. Though we
It is silly and ridiculous, but we still try as
still,
humans. So yeah, I think that's what helps make this film as resonant as it is, because we're all asking these types of questions and grappling with these different things, and people are still trying to cheat at death and trying to escape that fate, which is really interesting that the couple is able to get away and they are able to escape, and everybody else in that really eerie yet beautiful final shot of them doing that dance with death, and it's just this little family that made it out when nobody else did. Yeah, it's what a way to end this film.
yeah, and I love that idea that is woven into the ending of the Seventh Seal, which is that the two characters that were at the bottom rungs of society in this time, they are the jester archetype. They're performers, and they're viewed by many of the others in the group as the fools, the the what I mean, even Joff's wife kind of deems him to be a fool with all of the visions that he has that he's reporting back to her. And I love that the film is like, he sees something, and the faith that he has that is scorned and rejected and scoffed at by the world is actually the thing that has allowed him to survive even a little bit longer. And so of the entire group of all of these classic archetypal characters, it's actually those that were seen as the fool that actually were the ones that were able to survive. And so I think that's why I mentioned earlier that there's this odd like comfort in the thesis of the seventh seal, which is the triumph of almost this good-hearted faithfulness, that is unafraid to be seen as silly, that is the one that got to triumph in the end. And there, yeah, I don't know, there's something very endearing about that. At least that's my interpretation. There's probably a million ways to interpret that as well. That perhaps they're condemned to live this life here on earth that is broken and flawed for a little longer. But I actually view it as a triumph of a good naturedness, a generosity that they are continuously exhibiting throughout the film, that allows them to survive a little bit longer.
Yeah, yeah, and he sees these visions, and he has this like intuition about life that is underestimated and kind of scoffed at. And in the end, it was right.
Mm-hmm.
Like they ran when they were supposed to run away, and that spared them. So yeah, I think it is interesting that in in so many movies, in so many books, it's the knight who is the hero, it's the knight who survives. It's not the jester often, or if the jester
Sure.
survives, it's the jester's one of many. But I love that in this one, it was the knight's time to die, and so he did. And
Yeah.
it was these cunning people who were able to get away at the right time. So it's a fun kind of like turning a knight tale on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't save the day. Like at all. In
No.
fact, like he succumbs to the thing that he feared most. But once again, maybe this is me interpreting this in a more favorable way, and others may have a more cynical interpretation of this. But um, gosh, the kindness of death to give him a little more time to do his one meaningful deed, you know? Like that he was rewarded in some way for his desire to do good, that he got the opportunity to do, and there was able to be a peace and a restfulness for his soul before death came for him at the end. Because you see him in turmoil for so much of the film, this inability to reconcile the hard truths that he's seeing around him, the suffering that he sees around him, this promise of a crusade that would give him purpose and meaning that ultimately wasn't. It was kind of a sham. And he's wrestling with like all of it was meaningless. And for him to have this one final, very small act of generosity and kindness that could allow his soul to settle, for him to be reunited with his wife, man, maybe this Grim Reaper is kind of the hero of the story. Which I think is a fascinating way to read this character's journey, which is going from a state of chaos and turmoil to a sense of restfulness for his soul that can finally then end his storyline. I don't know. There's something oddly comforting about that, even though it's suggested that he basically dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah. But it's how he died. He died well. Yeah, no, the Grim Reaper is really nice in this film. Like, which is shocking because it's the Grim Reaper. You know, that is not a positive character. That's not our hero traditionally. But man, in this movie, he gives Block a lot of time to do a lot of things. And yeah, eventually he had to, you know, do his business. He was on a deadline, but he was willing to give him some time, which was nice. We love to see that.
How kind, how
How
generous.
kind. Yes.
um, some of the other moments that I really loved in the Seventh Seal, that once again is a whole thematic area that makes this text so rich, is the different dimensions and areas that people in society are exploring and wrestling through death through art. So we see that the couple that are the performers are putting on the whole show and a story about death and the personification of death. At a meta level, that's what the Seventh Seal is doing as well. But we also see the painter in the church painting the frescoes, exploring this idea and depicting death as a way to allow the churchgoers to reconcile and engage with this difficult concept and to find some sort of way to deal with the mass death that they're seeing, with a third of their comrades being taken out by the plague. And so I just thought that was fascinating, to that the Seventh Seal is showcasing so many dimensional areas where art is being used to explore difficult things, and this sort of expression as a form of catharsis that has been fundamental to the human experience from the beginning of time, and it still is now. We're all wrestling with the same questions, and art is the place that we can wrestle with them in a safe way, or to inspire us to wrestle with the things that we're maybe running from. So I thought that was a really fascinating whole dimension of the Seventh Seal around the role of art in society.
Yeah, yeah. I love it when a film is about a thing and then within the film there are examples of people doing the thing the film is doing. Like I love that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to see, especially the performers as they're doing their whole thing, like the the crowd doesn't receive what they're doing and kind of
Mm.
mocks it, is like throwing food at them. Like it's a whole It's a whole
Yeah.
thing. And I think that's also a really interesting piece of it as well, that um, sometimes the audience isn't ready for what the art is trying to say, and it's
Mm.
hard for people to like follow you there until they're ready. Like I feel like this is definitely one of those films that I might not have connected with it as well if I had seen this 10, 15 years ago. But now
Mm.
like I am in a place where, you know, like talking about death is kind of a more normal thing, which
Yeah.
feels like a weird
Yeah.
thing to say.
No, yeah.
But that's something that I'm thinking about more. Not in like a morbid way, but in a, this is actually going to happen. Let's make sure that we prepare for that eventuality. So I also think there's something about, you know, a movie being able to meet you where you're at, and art being able to meet you where you're at, and the performers understood, we're going to keep doing what we got to do, even if
Mhm.
they aren't necessarily connecting with it. So I loved that. And I really appreciated that scene with the painter in the church and that conversation that they had. So rich. I want to go rewatch that again because there's so much there that is so interesting to consider, and how they're talking about life and art and faith, and how all of these things kind of intersect with each other in that conversation.
Mhm. And the kind of unhealthy and toxic ways that religion can corrupt and take advantage of these huge fundamental fears that humans have as well. That's a whole sub theme of this film, I think, that both the sequence with the church painter, but then also the way that what he was painting is shown to us with the actual people in the village and the community, taking those that are inflicted, that are suffering, and creating this cycle of inflicting that on the next person in front of them as a way to almost earn their way back into favor with God, who seemed to be punishing them, and believing, being told a lie by the religious powers that be, that this is the way to earn favor back, to be in the good graces of God so that he will relent. Like, you see the way that reality is reflecting the art that is created, but also the art is inspiring and creating that reality as well. And this like continuous cycle of art and reality feeding into each other was shown through the an hour and a half experience of the Seventh Seal. We got to see that painting, and then almost like a few scenes later, see that actually play out in the village. They really believe the things that they've seen and they've been told, and it has been depicted to them. Therefore, they can now reflect that, and that is wild. That dynamic of reality and art interfeeding each other, again, perfectly displayed by the Seventh Seal. Wild.
And so elegantly too. It's
Yeah.
not like beating you over the head with it. It's just there for you to take in and reflect on, and do with it what you will.
Yeah. That scene was wild. Um, some of the other, I think, Ken, the Seventh Seal seems to cover everything, like every philosophical question and relational dynamic and yearnings and fears of the human soul. It's in here. um, one of the other ones that I think was richly explored through, especially some of the comedic moments, but some of the very dramatic moments as well, is the gender roles and the dynamics between the men and women in this world for this moment in time in history. And both like women that are being persecuted um, for being misunderstood by their society. So the young girl who's believed to be a witch and is like given her has to give her life for that. But also like the commentary around the way that women are able to wield and influence the men around them. So we get Lisa and Plug, the blacksmith, and the whole comedic sequence that we get with that. And I thought that was just like a fascinating dual reflection of a very complex dynamic of like gender role dynamics. But um, kind of hits a lot of it on the head, in that full spectrum of possibilities.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty jarring to watch this film as a woman in a lot of
Yeah.
parts.
A lot
Uh
of it doesn't age well.
yeah, but also yes, it does not age well. It's very hard to watch, but I'm like also the Crusades,
Hmm.
you're
Yep.
probably not wrong. Like
Yep.
so it just I man, it's a tough watch, but it's really well done, and there's a lot there too about the way that women aren't seen, or if they are seen, they're seen as property and something to be
Hmm.
taken and something to be owned, and that's also just interesting and goes with the idea of the Crusades as well. You know, we're going to conquer this thing in the name of God, and
Yeah.
that's how they are also seeing their interactions with women too. And then if you don't comply, then you're burned at the stake as a witch. Uh, so I just
Hmm.
there's so much there to think about being a woman in that society in the 50s. There's stuff even today that is still resonant in 2026, so there's a lot there. uh the women don't have like a ton of screen time, but when they do, it packs a punch and definitely leaves you thinking, and also leaves you feeling horrified. So that's great. the
Yeah.
the men and how the way they treat women is scarier than death in this film, and I think that's interesting.
Wow. So good. Yeah. What's his face? The companion to
Yeah, the
Block?
squire,
The Squire. Yo.
my dude.
Uh, Talk about a rough character, a problematic character to watch and follow. Uh, but like I mentioned earlier, even the most problematic characters, like the film, the there's something in them that is trying to do good, and you see that character trying to do good. It fails a bunch of times throughout the film and is highly problematic left and right, but you see the essence of him is to like be honorable and to keep to his word, but it's competing with this other desire to control and to conquer, which is very much expressed. And so, yeah, even that character that is honestly one of the worst ones to have to watch in this film, the Seventh Seal gives them a complexity. There's a dual force happening within him that is fighting to try and be generous and to take people in and to enact a sort of justice that he seems to deem as right for the situation. So he's trying as well.
He is trying. I do think it's interesting that, like, if I had to pick a character in this film that is painted as a villain, it would be the theologian who he stops from robbing the dead body. And so I think that's also interesting that all of these other characters, as problematic as they are, uh, there's something redeemable about them, or you can see that they're trying, or their earnestness, or you see these positive things. I think it's only the theologian that we don't see any positive characteristics to, which is very interesting. And to your point earlier about like the toxicity of religion, it's very interesting that that is the one character that this film is like, that's a bad dude. I'm not even going to give you anything good with
That's
him, just to
true.
reinforce all of those themes and ideas about the damage that religion can and has done in our world.
Mm, that's that's true. That's very good. He gets the most tragic ending because he also dies alone. Um, it was kind of hard to watch, like just this human being that is like truly suffering and is deemed to be like separate from the rest of the group, and no one is willing to go and help. Um, but it's the theologian that gets that ending. What is the seventh seal trying to say? I don't know.
Mhm.
We could put two and two together. And as tough as that character is as well, once again, seventh seal is like tugging on your heartstrings a little bit to be like, to watch him like in pain and suffering alone, in the forest, as no one is going to help him and to give him comfort in his final days of suffering. Like it's kind of hard to watch too as a fellow human being, no matter how rough he is throughout the rest of the film. And so,
Mhm.
gosh, Seven Seal really playing with our emotions in that scene as well. I'm like, don't make me empathize with this character. No, I don't wanna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he may have lost his empathy and humanity, but we haven't as the audience. So we have to feel all of those complex feelings that comes with a scene like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. We alluded to the humor early on in our conversation, but we've got to talk about that because, man, I was so wildly impressed that this was as funny as it was. Was not on my bingo card for going into this experience, and it's really funny. It's funnier than a lot of stuff that's coming out these days. That's my hot take. Is like this really worked for me. Maybe I'm just weird, but this is hilarious.
It really is, and I did not expect it, especially because how heady this film
Yeah.
is. It's so dense. It has so much to say. There's so much to think about. There's just it's a very cerebral film, and you wouldn't expect that and humor to go well together. But this is just perfectly paced, perfectly balanced, and shocking that the humor in a film from 1957 is still funny in 2026. And so, man, to be able to create something that leaves you with so much to think about, but
Yeah.
also is a really, really fun movie to watch, I think is a really special thing. And that's exactly what the Seventh Seal does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it captures that fundamental dynamic that is rooted in art, which is that comedy and tragedy are kind of two sides of the same coin. And the film zooms out in so many moments that are very densely emotional and says like it's all kind of ridiculous anyways. The guys like our valiant attempts at survival is all kind of silly, and there's something comforting about that zooming out of the lens, that allows us to then engage with the material in a more meaningful way. And I also really appreciate that the Seventh Seal chooses its moments to lean into comedy wisely and with restraint. So it's not a romp from beginning to end by any means. There's sequences that are very funny, but when the Seventh Seal needs to be deeply emotional, like when the young girl is getting burned at the stake, yo, none of that is funny. When the village members are doing their chain of afflictions on each other, that is deeply emotional and horrifying and difficult to watch. But then the Seventh Seal knows exactly when it needs to take us into a comedic bit to drive that levity again so that we can engage with material. So I just appreciate that the comedy is not littered throughout. It is actually like quite funny for many sequences. And even in some of the more serious ones, there's these moments of cleverness that are funny, but they are not absurd and more of that other lighthearted. So there's many different types and blends and flavors of humor that are deployed at just the right moments that really make the pacing of this work well.
I think that was another cool part of seeing this in the theater is like at first with the humor, you'd get like little laughs. Like when you're watching a movie and you think something is funny, but you're like, should I laugh at that?
It's
Like it was those kind of like, oh, I have to be quiet moments of laughter. But then once the movie got going and we were into it, then people were like full on laughing. And so that was just a
mm-hmm.
cool thing to like experience as a whole group, where we go from this like, ugh, should I be laughing at this, to like, oh no, I should be laughing at this because this is hilarious.
And that's that like connectedness of the human experience too, because some of the stuff is funny, but it's really dark, and so you kind of feel like you shouldn't be laughing at it because you might be an insane person. But then when you hear the person next to you laugh at that too, you're like, okay, so we both find that this dark thing is really funny too. Okay, cool. Permission now granted for all of us to let that out when we might have held it back a little bit because it felt wrong to laugh at certain things, even though they are played to be funny, but they're also really dark. And you're like, wow, am I just like a really flawed human being that's messed up inside? Oh, cool. You are too? Great. Let's be weird and messed up together now. That communal experience is pretty special and one that you might not have watching this at home. Yeah, just by yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you got to find a fellow weirdo to
Yeah,
come over and watch this at home with, or find a historic theater that is showing it.
playing this. Yeah, yeah, that was really cool. That was really neat. Okay, any other big things that we want to make sure we mention about the Seventh Seal before we wrap? There's a lot here, but
There is a lot here. Yeah, so just I have maybe two meaty things, and then I have a silly thing.
okay.
So meaty thing number one, I love your comparison that you made earlier with Nosferatu. And that film, that story is tied in with the plague, and
Yeah,
in helping people kind of see and understand what's happening through that, again, like art,
yeah,
showing a different way to make sense of this plague that was being experienced. And I think that it's interesting that the Seventh Seal is doing the same thing with the Black Plague and the Grim Reaper. And so
yeah.
I find that really, really fascinating, the way that we create art to help us understand things that we are experiencing, or things that
Mhm.
people have experienced in the past. Um, so I find that interesting. And then just another kind of related thing is uh, everything going on with the Crusades, and
Yeah.
how jarring that would be as a person to go through that. And so
Mm,
we don't have to know Block or the Squire very well. Like,
yeah,
we believe that questioning, because seeing the
yeah,
things that they saw coming back from that would leave you with a lot of questions, and
yeah,
a difficult journey to find answers to those questions that you're asking. So
yeah.
I loved how human that experience is. And I think whether you're coming back from the Crusades, whether you're in the
Mm,
1950s, the recent wars that we've experienced here, and people coming back from that with trauma and
yeah.
questions and things, like, it rings so true to what people are still experiencing today. So we didn't need a lot of time to like meet these characters, but because they are archetypes, because they are so human, it's like, oh, that makes sense. I
Hmm.
don't need more information about you. I got it. This
Yeah.
makes sense that you're questioning in this way.
Yeah. The fact that this is set during that time period, I feel like is so essential to this film because as dramatic and big a lot of the choices that the characters make, both as a society and a community, but also like as individuals, it's set against this backdrop of like the most impossible time period in history, arguably, where like there was no capacity to ever understand what was happening. And you flail for anything to try and make sense of it all. So gosh, if we got to do a chain of affliction, it was I was wrestling internally with like watching that and seeing the toxicity of like the religious ideology being passed down. But I then zoomed out even more and was like, to live during a time period like that, you truly are attempting to grasp to anything to find an answer. And if something even feels remotely like it could be an answer, my gosh, hold on to it and try because nothing makes sense. It really must have felt like God was punishing humanity. And what can you do to like earn yourself back into his favor is a natural question. So I think that the the truly dramatic stakes of this period of time really allows for like every character's decision and choice to like try and survive in such an impossible situation. There's just like immediate empathy for everybody. Like even the squire, like he's looking for comfort in dating this girl, which was against her wishes, terrible, but like that was his way to try and find some sort of respite. Yeah, there's everybody's like really truly grasping desperately for something, and so immediate empathy for everybody. Um, the presence of that time period feels so prevalent throughout every scene throughout the film. So to your point, I think is it's almost like the time period was a character and is influencing the entire plot and character dynamics moment to moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this film I don't think would work as well if it was set in a different time period. Like
Mm-hmm.
the the characters I think could work in different time periods, but just the intersection of all of the things that we've been talking about, I think is what makes this particular period in time so perfect for this film.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, did you have a silly thing
I do have a silly thing.
to end us with,
Uh
which very fitting for the seventh seal? We
yes.
need some.
So the entire time that I was watching this film, I kept thinking about Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. So if you
Which
want
we
to do
watched
a
when we got
double
home together because you were
yes,
like, I have
I
to show
had to
you
show you
this.
the scene. So if you want a double feature, watch The Seventh Seal and then watch Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. The Mr. Death scene is hilarious. It gets me every time. And so that's what I just kept thinking about while watching The Seventh Seal. Every time he would show up, I'd be like, this is Mr. Death. And made the movie even more funny for me. So
But before we leave, can I bring my drinks with me? Is that okay for this journey as we go with you, Mr. Death?
oh, it's
It
so
was
good.
very good. It's like exactly what we needed getting home on a Sunday night after seeing the seventh seal with our minds brimming with ideas and musings. It's just like throw on
Mhm.
Monty Python.
Just some tomfoolery, you know?
Yes,
It's a
it's
good
so
time.
good. Yeah. All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of The Seventh Seal. We are both big fans of this. This film really worked for us, and we are just so eternally grateful for the unique, special viewing experience for The Seventh Seal that we got to have, and are excited to dive into this even more and just to revisit this and meditate on the text even more because there's so much here. And if your theater near you is ever doing a screening of this for some reason, hop on that opportunity so quickly. But if not, there's so much in here to just experience again and again at home as well. So we're so thrilled to finally have checked this off of our watch list as well. An iconic film from the 50s, and the legacy is so great. So cool. All right. Well, we'll be back here on the feed with something a little bit more modern, I'm sure, very soon as we continue to, review films and dive into it. But we'll see y'all again very soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. We are part of the Movie Archer podcast network, so check out moviearcher.com to learn more.
Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating review letting us know your thoughts about today's episode.
Connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us.
We hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see y'all very soon.